Good evening, everybody. Buenas noches. Well, I'm Guillermo Mayer, and it's really wonderful to see each one of you tonight, especially after so much time apart. You know, in this pandemic, we've all experienced being separated, and tonight is one of those examples of how beautiful it is to be back in community, to be a part of something much larger than ourselves. What a video that was. It was amazing. And it only captured a slice of the work and of the people. And you're going to hear more about that tonight. We are assembled in this beautiful venue to celebrate the many accomplishments that we've achieved together over the last 50 years, to honor the remarkable people who have made up this organization, and to lift up with love our community partners who have stood with us every step of the way. And we're also here to do some important work of the soul and of our values, to recommit to advancing racial and economic justice, which are at the heart of Public Advocates' mission, because we know that what it's going to take is a multi-generational commitment, with each successive generation making their own important contributions. And as we ground ourselves to make that commitment for the next 50 years, and we think about what do we need to build over those next years, I invite us to draw inspiration from a tradition that has been around for centuries, and it originates more than 8,000 miles from here. I'd like to take you on a quick journey to a place at the foot of the Himalayas. The state of Meghalaya in northeast India is known for its beautiful mountain ranges with deep valleys and fast-flowing rivers. These valleys are the home to the Kazi people, who for centuries have made this lush but harsh terrain their own. You see, this is one of the wettest places on earth. It receives up to 45 feet of rain every year, not inches, feet. That's 13 times Seattle. Right. And in the summer months, the monsoons grow so strong that the rivers in the valleys swell up and grow dangerous. They're deadly to cross, and they separate and cut off dozens of Kazi villages from being able to connect with one another. And without the ability to connect and provide mutual support, the very existence of these villages and these communities would be at risk. But they came up with an ingenious solution centuries ago. They began to plant a tree, a fig tree, along the river on opposite sides. It's a banyai tree, I believe, banyai tree. I might be pronouncing that wrong. And these are very flexible trees, and they put out aerial roots. And what they would do through a process that would take decades is take the roots of a tree and coax them over and across the river and slowly weave them with the emerging roots on the opposite side. The outcome is a living bridge that allows these communities to remain connected. These are remarkable living structures. And today, there's an entire network of living bridges throughout these valleys. They are so strong that they can withstand the harshest of storms. In fact, get this, they grow stronger the older they get as roots mature and become thicker, right? They not only provide protection for the villagers as they cross these unpredictable waters, they also allow entire communities to remain connected and resilient, even in times of peril. But it takes decades to build just one single living bridge. And one lifetime is not enough. So each generation has to transmit to the next the tradition and the knowledge of weaving these roots together, of reinforcing them, and most importantly, of bringing forth new living bridges into existence. One could say that those of us here at home are tasked with doing something very similar in our work for social justice. You see, for 5 decades, Public Advocates has been extending its roots throughout California, across geographies, across culture and language, across so many issue areas, and going through some pretty treacherous political terrain in the process. The purpose is to link up with the emerging roots and leadership of local communities, to slowly build trust, to weave our legal strategies with policy campaigns and the power of grassroots organizing to win systemic change. One could say that we're all tasked with building an entire network of living bridges for social justice that can provide protection against the rising tides of poverty and the howling winds of racism, to connect communities of color and people living in poverty to opportunity in their own neighborhoods, in their own schools, and beyond, so that each and every person can belong in our society. Because if you look at our work in our first 50 years, that's what it all boils down to create the conditions of belonging. And I know we don't talk about our work that way, but I submit to you that belonging continues to be one of the most central conversations of our lifetimes. Who truly belongs in our cities and neighborhoods? Who truly belongs in our schools and universities, in our history books? Who belongs in our workplaces, in our health clinics? Who belongs at the decision-making table, in the census count, in the voting booth? Who belongs in our nation's borders? Can we truly belong in our very own bodies? Right? The yearning to belong, it runs deep in human beings. It begins with ourselves and our families. It extends to our friends and our relationships. And one of the most beautiful expressions of belonging is at the societal level. And that's why it injures the heart to see entire communities systematically excluded. And the rational mind kicks in and says, what are we going to do about it? Right? Now, I know that when I say the word belonging, the last thing you probably think about is a bunch of lawyers. Most people think of lawyers and they immediately want to react like this. There's no belonging in this memo, right? It makes sense. We can be quite adversarial. We do not back down from a righteous fight easily, but for good reason. You see, when everybody belongs, our Black and Latino school children are not relegated to understaffed schools patrolled by armed police. When you belong, you are taught by a caring adult with the support of counselors and nurses and mental health professionals to support your well-being. When you belong, your family does not have to live in constant fear of being evicted or priced out of their home and neighborhood when the greed of the speculative market comes knocking on your front door. When you belong, your political representation matters. And I have to say this, we don't have to put up with elected officials like we're seeing in LA spewing hateful comments as they plot to limit Black political representation for their own twisted sense of political gain. When you belong, your labor is never taken for granted, and neither is your health. The essential work that you do, the contributions you make to society are rewarded by fair wages and benefits. And when you belong, your voice not only matters, it is considered absolutely essential to our democratic system of governance. But creating the conditions of belonging is no easy feat. We've been at it for 50 years. We're going to be at it for 50 more. But like a living bridge, it moves slowly, inch by inch. It takes generations to bring forth these conditions into existence. But that's why we have so much to be thankful for tonight and so much to celebrate, because this hall, this building is filled with generations of people who have given themselves to this work. And tonight, in about a moment, we're gonna begin to recognize some of those individuals and organizations with our Voices of Conscience Award for their vision and their leadership and their activism. Because when things get really hard, these are the folks that show up. Let me close with this by saying thank you. Thank you for your enormous vote of confidence over the last decades. And more importantly, thank you for your trust in those many times that we earned it, and even those times when we didn't, because we're not perfect, but you stuck by with us, and that made all the difference. And thanks to that, we are getting, as we get older, we get more resilient. And I know 50 years is a long time. That's a lot of accomplishment to be proud of. But as far as I'm concerned, with your continued support, Public Advocates is just getting started. Thank you for being here tonight. I hope you enjoy the rest of the program.
Thank you.